group. So first of all, Kathy, Evelyn Shaw, and Cynthia Regan will be doing the technical support. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat, which is located at the bottom of the screen. And please remain muted. So your screen will not come into the main screen. So when we do a recording, when we upload the session to the YouTube, so your screen will not be in the main screen because it only records the screen view. Thank you very much. Another thing is Cynthia will be uploading a file, which is a class note for today. So if you wish to download and do a little note, please do so. You can find it in a chat box. If you hover your cursor at the bottom in the chat, click on it, you'll be able to find a file titled Session 4. If you have any questions, as I say, you can either put it in a chat. I'll pause in the middle of the session so you'll be able to raise your hand virtually, or you can raise your hand in your screen. So Cynthia will be observing who's raising the hands to ask questions. So if you're interested in watching this video later on, we'll be uploading the video to our YouTube channel. So please do go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you will not miss any other newest updated the videos. So today we'll be recording. So if you wish to stop the video, then please do so now and please stay muted. The special techniques. It is a technique that developed in handbells. So handbell is probably only one instrument that's still evolving in technique-wise as a percussion instrument. So there are 2 or 3 categories. One is resonated sound and stop tone, and there is another one is hybrid in between stop tone and the resonated sound. So today I'll be covering most of the resonated articulations that creates different color, different approach in creating the resonant sound. So number 1, it's very basic default ringing. So as Kathy mentioned in last week's session, it's very important that you move your arm in circular motion, because moving your arm is like a breath support to a singer. So if you do not move your arm, and I'll stop talking so you actually can hear the sound. But if I move my arm, it resonates a lot better. So when you ring, the duration of the note is done, you need to stop the bell on your shoulder. So now let's look at the example number 1 on the screen, on the shared screen. So if you look at the E5, the first line on the treble clef. So you have E in 2 in a row. Each one has 2 beats long, which means you are not going to damp in between those 2 notes. It continues to ring. 1, 2, 3, 4, damp on the downbeat of measure 2. So you do not want to 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you made a second half note to a quarter note. So now if you look at the D5, this one is a little bit different. Although it's in a row, 2 Ds in a row, you have a quarter rest in between. So which means you play on 1, damp it on 2, 3, damp it on 4, and ring again, 2, damp, 4. So you have to read your music very carefully. If you look at the measure 4, C4 and B4. It happens side by side, so you will be ringing. So ringing and damping has to happen at the exact same moment. So you do not over damp nor under damp. So you have to damp and ring at the same time. To create a legato beautifully connected the line. So now let's look at number 2, LV, let vibrate. So now you learn how to damp. Now I'm asking you not to damp your bells. So if you look at the example 2, the LV is written at the top, all the 8 notes. So LV is not written for the bass bells or middle bell E5 or G5, although it does not matter in this case because it's a whole note. So the top notes, I have a G6, which is the very first note on measure 22. Because it's LV, you will not damp it. If it's a default ringing, you would go, you will damp it. But since it's LV, you will not damp. And damp it when you see another LV or ring R, which shows a default ringing, or another articulations, for example, modulato, or suspended mallet, or step tone, any kind of step tone, that will cancel the LV. But just to remind you, the LV will not be canceled by a bar line. For example, between 22 and 23, you stop the G6 downbeat of 24. So you need to continue to move your arm away from your body so you will create a beautiful sound. So now let's look at example 3. The example 3, as you can see, the LV is written in between 2 staves. So the top notes, if you look at measure 18, the 8 notes, D6, E6, F6, those are not LVs. Those has to be default ringing. But all the bass bells and the treble stems going down, those are LV'd. This is F5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and next measure you damp it, because there is clearly markings as R, which shows a default ringing. And there is another default ringing in the measure 21. Now let's go to example number 4. There is another sign that can cancel the LV, although we do not use it for purpose of canceling the LV these days, but older printed the previous years, you will still see this one canceling the LV. So if you look at measure 141, there's an LV written in the bass clef. So bass clef, they're going and damp it on downbeat of measure 144. So if I have an LV like this with a big crescendo, I would ask my ringers to start LV very low, arms, bells away from my body, and start a little bit soft so I can create beautiful crescendo. 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, damp. But it has to be clean damp on the downbeat of 144, so you will hear different chord coming in on the downbeat. So that damp sign with the 2 circles with the cross on it, it can be used as a selective damp, which is an example number 5. So that sign is on in the middle of the stem. That means you have to damp the note, although it's in the middle of the LV. So for example, this is a G5, which is second line of treble clef. So it's going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and because it has a damp marking, selective damp, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and if I do not have the marking on those stems, I would be playing like this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and but because the G5 does not belong to the harmony underneath, the composer gave a selective damp, so dissonance will be eliminated from the chord it's been written in. So you can see the G5 and F sharp 5 in measure 2, selective damp, and G5, selective damped, and measure 3. So now let's look at example number 6. Shake is a different resonated articulation. So all percussion instruments, for example, piano, marimba, timpani, the loudest point is when you attack the instrument. Right after the sound is started to decay, you cannot make it loud. Even if whatever you try to do, you will not get louder because the moment of impact is the loudest. So shake can change that by rocking it back and forth like this. So just remember, breath support, shake has to go together. If you feel shaking back and forth a little bit hard, I always recommend my ringers to do side to side shake. It uses different sets of muscle groups in your arm, so it's a lot easier to do side to side than back and forth. You can actually hear in my dominant hand, shaking side to side gives a lot even, clean shake. So I'll try that one more time, side to side, back and forth. So you can clearly hear the different sound. So I highly recommend doing it side to side if you are doing it on the bigger bells. I recommend doing it if you are doing it as a shake on C4, a D4, a E4, and F4. Tilt it a little bit forward so you will shake only using half of the diameter of the casting. So the clapper will not hit the both sides of the castings, only will hit one side of the casting. Because the diameter is so large, it takes a long time to travel back and forth. It's better to use only one side of casting on the bigger bells. Like if F4, E4, and down to C4. If it's B3, I would not ask my ringers to shake on those bigger bells. So if you look at the example number 6, so there is a shake, little sign next to the notes. So E6 and G6, they're shaking starting 82, and they dampen on 83, and start again the second beat of 83, and then 84, the look like a tie over the top. That's actually not a tie, that's actually a slur. So you will re-attack. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, damp. Damp, 85, you have to re-attack it. But if you look at example number 7, that's a little bit different. Let's pretend this is a G4 and A4. This is a G5 and A5. So if you look at measure 1, you have 2 bells shaking, but it will be in different position, right? So 2 people will be shaking at the same time. So it's a tied over to measure 2, measure 3, measure 4, and measure 5. So it's 5 beats long with tie. The one before was not a tie. So that means you are not going to re-attack it. You are going to create very smooth shake for 5 beats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, damp. If there was no tie, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. So you got the idea. So I gave you a little bit more examples in the shake. So if you look at the example number 8, so measure 89, B flat 5, D6, and F6. It has a shake, and it has a tie over it. But it releases the shake at a downbeat of 90 with a tie. So this is B flat 5. So you will play 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, damp. Okay, so you will not re-attack it because it's tied over. If there is no tie, you re-attack it, but in this case, you don't. So it's the same thing in measure, example 9, measure 141, 142, but this one is a little bit different than the one before, example number 8. Example number 8, you just held it without shaking, but this one, tie, and then you keep on shaking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, damp. That's example number 9. Now, example number 10. So C6, which is the third space and measured 124. So you have shake, tied over, and you release it. Just like example number 8. Example number 8 was a little bit different because there were some bells playing a downbeat of 90, but here all the bells were shaking, they were tied over, and they release it on the second beat. So it goes 1, 2, 3, damp. So shake, 2, release it, and damp on 3. So there are different kinds of shakes. So depending on how you're in, definitely the ties can make a difference. So if it is tied over for multiple measures, make sure you start low, give a beautiful arm motion, raise. So depending on how fast and how many measures are tied over, you have to judge how fast I can move my arms. Now, let's look at suspended mallet. Example number 11. So there are designated mallets depending on the size of the bells you are playing. So D5, I have blue mallet. So when you are holding the mallet, make sure it's not rigid like this, because if it's rigid like this, it will stay on the casting. It will not give you beautiful resonated sound. So you need to have mallet not too far away where you can get it bouncing off of my hand like this. Let's see if you can see a little bit better. So there are different ways of holding the mallets, French way, German way, American way. So I usually hold it with 2 fingers and try to find the good place to hold it so it will bounce off easily. And make sure when you are hitting the bell with the mallet, you never hit in the middle of the casting. You always hit the top 1/4 inch right below the rim, but you never want to hit on the rim of the casting. That's also not recommended. So bouncing off, very, very loose, bouncing, and you hit it and then let the mallet bounce off of the casting. If I don't, I hope you can hear the difference. So I'll try on a smaller bell. This is a B5. We recommend red mallet. So it gives suspended sound. So even if I stop it, it still rings. That's what we are looking for. So the suspended mallet is marked with a cross. As you can see in the, example 11. Those notes, the stems going up and measure 5 with a cross, those are ones you have to play with a mallet, bell off of the table, holding with the other hand. Now, measure the example 12, that's the same thing. the cross signs are marked on the top of the notes that stems are going up on treble bells. Now, I want you to look at example number 13. That one is not suspended mallet. Do you see the difference between example 11, 12 and example 13? A lot of times I see my ringers get confused between those two. Example number 13 has cross plus staccato little dot underneath, which means you will play the bells later on the padded table and play with the mallet, which gives a stepped tone. It will be a totally different kind of articulation that computer is asking you to do. So make sure just cross itself, suspended, cross plus dot is on the table, step tone. Now let's look at number 6, ring touch. Example number 14. So if you look at the ring touch in measure 97, so it has RT, short for ring touch, which means you're going to ring and damp it on your shoulder right away. So it's in between resonated and step tone because it was stopped right away. It does not matter how long the note is. Quarter note, 8th note, 16th note, does not matter. You just damp it right away. So one thing you have to remember, very important, so you have to ring it close to your body. So think about it, if you extend your arm and ring it, and you have to damp it, then you have to bring it back to yourself to damp it. You will not be able to damp it right away. That will not be a ring touch. So ring it. So just one thing, close your shoulder so you will be able to damp it quickly. So if you look at example number 15, there are some ring touches. So if you look at measure 54, C6, which is a third space from the bottom, so it goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So we recommend ringers to extend their arm when it's repeated notes, right? We don't want to play stationary like this. You want to extend, but by the time the second beat, the fourth time you ring the C6, you have to bring the C6 close to your body so you will be able to do the ring touch right away. So 1 and 2 and 3 and, okay? So extended arm, bring it back and damp it on you nice and quickly. So now let's look at number 7, echo. Example number 16. So echoes marked with a little fish hook. So this technique is not usually written on the smaller bells. It's usually written on the larger bells. I would say C6 and below or C50 below. There is a reason for it. So the technique calls for ring it and touch the rim on the padded table very gently. I'll try it with a bigger bell so you can hear it better. So ring it. So I hope you can hear wong, wong whenever I touch the padded table. But the important thing is you do not want to, then you will damp the bell. So make sure you just very lightly touch the rim of the bell. Because it's a larger bell, it keeps going. But if it's a smaller bell like C6, sometimes we see echo written on C6. You already cannot hear it because the casting is smaller, the sounds dies a lot sooner than the ones that have a bigger casting. So usually the echo will show you which beat you should do the echo, touching the rim on the table, like example 16, beat 3 and 2 and 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. But there are some publishers will not put the beats, but it will be very clear which beats they want you to do it. So example 17. So those echoes are only for the G4, the bass clef, B4, the bass clef, D5, and G5. Those are not for the stems going up treble notes. It's obvious because you're only holding for the one beat. There's no time to do echo. So D5 you play on 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 12, 2, 3, 4. That's how it's written. So even if there are no numbers, the beats, it will be very clear. So let's look at next page, example number 18. So if you look at measure 40, so echo is written with the beats where it should happen. But those are only written for the bass notes. Although there are dotted half note in treble land in measure 40, those shouldn't do the echo technique. Those are only meant for the dotted half note in the bass clef. Same thing, measure 41, only for the bass clef. 42, same thing, ring, echo, echo. So make sure to read which articulation is meant for which bells. It usually decided by the stem directions and where the techniques are written on the music. Now let's look at the next technique, number 8, swing. It's very similar with echo, but this is not a fish hook. It's just straight arrow down and arrow up. So in the swing, you ring it and bring it down and bring it up. So when you go back, make sure you do not overdo it. For example, how many of you have bell table right up against a wall? Okay, just imagine you have a wall. What happened to your bell? Yeah, so you did unwanted modulato on the bell, on the wall, which does not have any pad on it. So you do not want to do that. So you go center your body and bring it right back. So if you look at example 19 on measure 75, so you ring it on 1, 2, 3. How slow you do it, director will decide it for you because it has a fermata on it. If director directs 1, 2, 3, then there will be the tempo. If director conducts in slower tempo, 1, 2, 3. So you can all synchronize with those who are doing the swing technique. So if you look at measure the example 20, the swing is written all the way at the bottom and measure 5. So C3, G3, and C4. So it does not have any numbers on them, but it's very clear. The composer wanted ring on 1, down on 2, up and 3. And if you have C3, that means you have to ring it again. Or C4, you have to ring it again. And next swing is only for C4 and G4, down on 2, up on 3. And continue to hold through the 4th beat and dampen on the next measure. So you do not dampen right away. You have to follow how many beats does swing gets. So it's 4 beats. So you have to hold it for the 4 full measure. Okay, now let's look at a next example, number 21. Now I want you to look at very carefully. I had a lot of ringers who will get confused between fish hook with an arrows. So measure 4, that's a echo. And measure 5, oh, that's a swing. and damp it on 4 and measure 6. Oh, that's a fishhook. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this music has echo, swing, echo going one measure at a time. So you have to make sure you are doing the correct articulation, although it looks very similar, but yet it's very different. So if you look at example number 22, so there is an echo sign for everyone's to do, yeah, F3 all the way at the bottom to F6 all the way to the top. So everyone is doing swing. And what happens down below 28? It's tied over. So you do not re-attack it, but you do what? Echo. So I'll show you with a bigger bell. So 1, 2, 3, echo, echo, echo. 9, 2, 3, echo, echo, echo. So bring you to attention. As you can see, the swing was meant for the treble bells, measure 27, but swing was only for the bass bells, not for the treble bells. And measure 29, swing was only for the bass bells, not for the F5 and the treble bell. So treble bell F5 was meant to be just default ring and damp it on 30. I hope that explains what composer wanted you to do articulation-wise. Is there any questions? Let me stop here. Let me get any questions that if you have.
We have a question about example 20, about the 3 black dots under the swing in measure 5.
Oh, that's for the octave. That's not for the articulation. Because it's from a music, it was explaining some other things like octave, how many, which one should be included. Yeah, that was not for the articulation. As you can see, the G3 was bracketed, right? So if you only have 4 octave set without the C3, then you shouldn't play the G3 unless you have C3. So it belongs to that explanation, not for the articulations. Any other questions?
I don't see any other questions.
Okay, let's keep going then. All right, so we did the swing and echo. Now, grace note. Grace note is one of the techniques that I see a lot of times done incorrectly. So when you have grace note and main note, if there are different notes, like for example, if you look at measure 33, so I'll do a G5 and A5, you play them together and you damp the grace note, which is G, right away. So I want you to listen to it. So it's never meant to be this. The reason why is, as you can see in the music, G5 and G6 supposed to be unison. A5 and A6 supposed to be unison. And remind you, G5 is in one ringer's hand, A5 is another ringer's hand, G6 and A6, those are in another ringer's hands. So try to synchronize all 4 bells in between 3 ringers by doing this. It's going to be very unsuccessful or dirty in a way, and then not clean. That's why if you play on the beat together, it's cleaner than this way. But if grace notes, if we go to example number 24, if the grace note and the main note is exactly the same, there is no way you can apply the rule that I just explained, which means you have to attack it twice. So whether land the grace note on the beat, like 1, 2, 3, 4, or before the beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, that would be the director's call. But landing the grace note on the beat will be easier for ringers to synchronize the beats. For example, here, measure 64, there are 4 notes synchronized at the same time. Try to guess if they are not synchronized, how many attacks you will hear on beat 2. A lot, right? So that one we want to eliminate. So you might want to ask ringers to play on the beat, so it will be easier to synchronize. And if you look at the next example, which is on page 9. So here, example 25, this one has 3 grace notes. So this one you have to really approach it slowly with the ringers. I'll count it off. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you ask ringers to C6 and C7 in one ringer's hand, 1 or 2 ringers' hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and then you gradually speed up the tempo so you'll be able to line all the bells. The good news is D6 and D7 is 1 ringer's hand. E6 and E7 is 1 ringer's hand. So you do not have to worry about synchronizing those octaves together. So now let's look at gyro. It's another resonated technique. It gives a bending of the pitch by moving the bells that we would not normally do in a default ringing. So you ring it and you go around horizontally. So you bend the main pitch, which is produced by the casting, the rim of the casting. So as you can see, measure 47, the composer wanted the gyro to be done on the beat 2. So 47 goes 1, 2, 3, 4. You still have to hold it for 4 beats because it was done on the whole note. So remind you, the gyro was not meant for the 8th note, which are stems going down with the L beat at the top. Yeah, the L beat that we talked about at the beginning. The gyro is only for the bass bells, C4 through C5, and treble bell, E5 and G5. Ring, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would ask my ringers to do slow gyro on measure 49 because it is to fade. So I would bend the pitch very slowly. I try to synchronize as much as I can so they will do exactly the same thing at the same time. Now let's go to rolled chord. I only have 1 minute left. I have a lot to cover, don't I? All right, so the rolled chord is not easy. How many times did you feel that the ringers are not playing the beats on the beat together? You normally get rolled chord. But if you want a rolled chord, they play together, right? So it's not easy to either play together and roll it evenly bottom to top. So in this case, I would count it off 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, depending on how many notes are stacked up. So 1 will be C5, 2 will be G5, 3 will be C6, 4 will be E6, and so on and so forth. So go very slowly. So I will say 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And next, you count it off a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And faster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. If it's fast enough, the counting number is not fast enough, I would change it to something different like watermelon, watermelon. chimichanga, chimichanga. So you can say the words fast. So the ringers can synchronize with the word, each to say it, so they can say the words in their head and then land the bell with those words or the counting. Okay, now let's keep going. Number 12, tableland damp. You don't get to see this a lot. Usually you will see at the very end of piece, like this example 28. What you do is you ring it and damp it facing down. So it gives very dramatic, clean cutoff. So if you damp it, there might be left off, and then visually it's different. 1, 2, and there's a clap. So 1, 2. That's how the composer wanted. Okay, let's keep going with the next one. Diamond shape note head. You probably already know it, but I wanted to cover all the bases. So if you see all the music written in circular note shape and suddenly you have a diamond shape, that's not editorial mistake. That shows you have to play those notes with your chime. If you do not have chimes, then I would play those notes on the bell. Vice versa. You only have chimes, you play all the notes on the chimes. But if you have bells and chimes, then you will play bells when you have a circular note head and chimes when you see a diamond shaped note head. Just simple as that. Okay, now let's go to, was it the last one? Did I cover everything? 2 minutes? Passive 440? Any questions, everybody?
I do not see any more questions.
Okay, great. All right, everybody, thank you for joining. The Studio 440 happens on Thursdays at 4 o'clock for 40 minutes. So that's why it's a 440. If you're watching YouTube, the video, we are on live on Thursdays 440 at 4 o'clock for 40 minutes. Join us live. You can sign up on our website, maltmark.com. So you'll be able to ask live, interact with the other people who are joining in a Zoom meeting. So thank you all for joining today. Don't stop making joyful noise with your choir chimes and handbells. We'll see you next week. Thank you very much.